What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be taking on the Team Go Rocket Challenge in the Great League, where the aim is to play out the battle as if I were a Team Rocket member, i.e. running a triple shadow team, always shielding the first two charge attacks, running a non-evolved Pokemon in the lead, not being able to swap out of any matchups, and sticking to the same order that I entered the battle with, as well as once I've committed to throwing a charge move with a Pokemon, I can only throw that move throughout the rest of the battle. Now, I actually set this as a subscriber challenge around 8 months ago and had some crazy submissions for it, so if you never saw that video, I definitely recommend checking it out. But this time I'm taking on the challenge and I'm going to attempt it with all 18 Typings in the game. Now, I won't tell you how many battles I was able to win, but honestly I think you'll be quite surprised. Now, I did have 1 or 2 battles where I accidentally threw the wrong move after already committing to throwing a different charge move, but it's not really that deep. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What other challenge content would you like to see me attempt in the Go Battle League? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Shadow Ghastly for the Triple Ghost team here. Shadow Ghastly, one of the most attack-weighted Pokemon in the entire game. Quite nice that we are double resisting the Acid Fast Food pressure here. Of course, I'm going to have to shield the first charge move, as I mentioned in the intro of this video, and now I'm going to look to overfarm and fire off the Nightshade. Nightshade going to deal big damage. It gets the KO. That Mud Slap did insane damage, but I can reach a second Nightshade, and that was a debuffed Nightshade, by the way. I'm now forced to come in with the Shadow Dusclops. Of course, I have to shield the next charge move here. They fire off the Bone Club. They're now going to swap out into Corviknight. They do still have a 2 shield advantage. However, we are so loaded on energy. So at this point, we're just going to spam out these Shadow Punches. We've committed to the Shadow Punch. So Shadow Punch number 2, going to be no shielded, and we can reach a 3rd Shadow Punch before they even get to the payback. Shadow Punch is going to connect this time around, and they do finally throw. Now, they might have overfarmed just a little bit here, but payback gets the one shot. We come in with the Frost Sash. We get that Powder Snow farm down. We can Powder Snow, farm down the Shadow Kanto Marowak, and I'm able to take that game. Now, heading into the next battle, we've got the Fairy typing leading with Shadow Marwa, which is now available from Team Go Rocket leader battles. So if you don't have the shiny Shadow of this Pokemon and you were trying to get it the previous time around, well, it is now available again. But anyways, at this point, unfortunately, I know this is just going to be another Icicle Spear, but I'm forced to double shield as are the rules of this challenge. But the opponent now going to swap out into Unovan Stunfisk. We've got quite a lot of energy, so I can go for a Vice Grip. Vice Grip dealing decent damage there, and we can fire off a second one straight away. Now remember, of course, I cannot swap out of this matchup, so even though I'd prefer to come in with my Alolan Ninetales, forced to just stay in here, but we can now come in with the Ninetales, and I'm not going to bother throwing straight away just in case the opponent does try and swap out into the Wall Rain, and the opponent does exactly that. So now I look to overfarm, gonna full send the Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam, not going to be shielded, it gets the KO there, and the final Pokemon is going to be a Wigglytuff. Now we've already committed to throwing Dazzling Gleam, so we will go for another one here. Dazzling Gleam is going to grab the final shield. They get the full Charm farm down. But now we can come in with our Shadow Galarian Weezing. Icy Wind, of course, going to debuff my attack stat, but that's okay. Sludge is still going to do a lot of damage there. They swap back into Unovan Stunfisk, and I know this is resisted damage, but I need to throw Sludge into Wigglytuff, and actually we get the perfect farm down. I believe they might have a Swift loaded, but either way, doesn't matter. Sludge wins CMP, gets the KO despite the debuff, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there, into the next battle, we've got the Poison Grunt, so leading with a Shadow Alolan Grimer here. So, of course, not ideal into a Steel-type Pokemon, as it is going to be double resisted with the Poison Jabs, but we can shield up the Hydro Cannon, go for Crunch straight away. Looks like we lose CMP here, but Crunch is going to connect, and it does big damage. Honestly, we might be able to go for a full Poison Jab farm down here. We have to double shield anyway, so that's kind of my only play. But the opponent actually makes my life slightly easier. They come in with an Altaria. They're going to no-shield the Crunch. That does big damage, and they're committing to a full farm down, allowing Grimer to reach yet another Crunch. Now, they will use their first shield. They do get a massive farm down, however, and unfortunately, Nidoqueen is going to struggle quite a bit trying to get a Mudslap farm down here, as of course, they are Flying-type Pokemon, but they can go for back-to-back Sky Attacks. Sky Attack doesn't quite KO. They swap back into Empoleon just to be farmed down, and the same thing with Altaria. We come out with a Poison Fang loaded, and that is massive for me. Poison Fang is going to grab the final shield. Now we can come in with our Shadow Toxicroak. The opponent going to fire off a Chilling Water, but Chilling Water not going to deal deal that much damage. I'm going to look to overfarm just a little bit here. Gonna full send the Shadow Ball. And of course, Shadow Ball gets the KO there. And I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. We've got the Psychic typing, so going to lead with Shadow Girafarig in the lead up against a Shadow Kanto Marowak. Now, the second the opponent swaps into Steelix here, I'm pretty much already certain of the team that they're going to be running. It's going to be Bastiodon in the back. However, that knowledge doesn't necessarily help me all that much because I'm not really given that many options in terms of what I can do differently in these battles. Here, we're going to go for another Trailblaze. Trailblaze, first one, actually ended up grabbing a shield, so they double shield their Shadow Steelix. And of course, now we can come in with the Claydol. We've seen Crunch already. I'm going to shield this. I have to shield anyways, but unfortunately, they do bait with their Psychic Fangs. Now, not really the best position here. However, Malamar, of course, typically going to be on Superpower, so should be fine if it is a Bastiodon in the back. Shadow Ball going to connect. It does big damage. I'm debuffed, so this should be getting the KO. Malamar should be able to sweep the end game though. However, unfortunately, I completely forgot. I do not have Superpower. Instead, I'm running Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam is going to be double resistant up against these Steel and Rock typing, so we have to go for Foul Play. But Foul Play honestly does not do much damage whatsoever, and this was a completely winnable game. You can see I would have reached back-to-back superpowers before they got to the Stone Edge there. However, unfortunately, since we don't have it, we do end up losing that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Lapras leading for the Ice types. Honestly, one of the more usable Pokemon that I can lead with for any of these Team Rocket grunts. We're going to go for Sparkling Aria. Sparkling Aria going to deal decent damage. Not quite sure it puts them into perfect farm down range before they get to the next charge move. And we're going to see that, unfortunately, we just barely missed out on that farm down, but I have to double shield the lead anyways, so it's not the worst thing ever. And now they're going to come in with a Charge Bug. Now, my hope here is that because they had a Wigglytuff in the lead, maybe they've got something pretty toxic in the back, like a Bastiodon. So at this point, we go for Sparkling Aria. We end up grabbing a shield from the opponent. We're going to come in with the Shadow Sand Slash here, and of course, all shields are down. The opponent goes for Discharge. I did think about going for Ice Punch straight away. However, I recognize if they try to swap out and catch onto Bastiodon, I want to just go for a draw on just in case they do try and make that catch. They don't, but they end up using their final shield, and my prediction was correct. It was the Bastiodon in the back, and they are getting absolutely deleted by the Mud Slaps. High Horsepower gets the one shot, one more Mud Slap, farms down the Charger Bug, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. We're going to see Dragon here, and we are going to lead with a Shadow Tyrant. So, of course, have to stay in this lead matchup here. The opponent will be able to outpace me quite comfortably with the Shadow Sableye. Very nice flex there with the Shiny Shadow as well. I'm going to go for Rock Tomb. The opponent's faults, they make a catch onto Azumarill. Now, honestly, it's not the worst thing ever. However, I have to stay in this matchup, and I am going to be forced to double shield my Tyrant, which is not really ideal. At this point, I obviously would prefer to just no shield this, because we could then come in and maybe shield once with my Shadow Zweilous and Dragon Breath farm them down, but I'm forced to stay in. Honestly, at this point, I would prefer if they just shield this up here, but the opponent not going to bother shielding. They come in with a Shadow Venusaur. They've got a 2-shield advantage, and I'm forced to come in with my Shadow Zweilous. So, of course, Sludge gonna do quite a lot of damage there. They swap back into Sableye. Maybe could have gotten away with just going for a Body Slam bait here. The opponent is gonna shield the Dark Pulse. The opponent also gonna get a full Shadow Claw farm down. They come out with the Charge Move loaded. The opponent going to full send a Dazzling Gleam, taking out Shadow Salamence, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But that was actually someone on my friends list, so I kept that battle in just to show that, like, I'm not that bad of a player. I was just trying a challenge. But anyways, GG's to that trainer into the next battle. We are going to try the normal typing. So we are running Shadow Girafarig back. Of course, didn't manage to get a win with the Psychic typing. Let's see if the normal types will do better. So here, I'm going to go for a Trailblaze. Trailblaze going to boost up my attack stat we throw on CMP. I wasn't quite sure if a Psychic Fangs would KO from that range. Maybe it wouldn't quite get the KO there. But now they swap into Jellicent. I'm already boosted. They've seen the Trailblaze. Trailblaze is going to grab the final shield, and they will also fire off a Surf immediately. Of course, Surf will get the KO, but now we can come in with the Shadow Ursaring, and I don't need to throw any charge boosts here. They're going to barely outpace me to that Surf, but now we can commit to a full Shadow Claw farm down. We're going to come out with quite a lot of energy, very close to back-to-back Swifts. Actually, looks like we do have back-to-back Swifts already loaded. A blind throw there, as I wasn't sure what was going to come in. They came in with a Licky Licky. They then swap and catch the next Swift onto Ninetales, but that's that's actually perfect for me, as Ursaring, still not done, able to reach a last second Swift. Swift is going to put them into range where it looks like Toucannon can just go for the full peck farm down. Body Slam wouldn't cut it, Shadow Ball would be double resisted, and so I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Corviknight in the lead. The opponent's going to say swap into Primeape. So this is definitely where we want to see it because we have two Pokemon that are weak to the fighting typing in the back. However, the fact that they swapped out immediately into Primeape probably implies they've got an ABB style team, in which case they might have a second fighting type in the back, or maybe a Mud Slapper or something similar. Either way, a Pokemon that likely my backline isn't really going to appreciate. Either way, we're forced to stay in here. Gonna go for the Rock Slide. Rock Slide, actually a CMP tie that we should lose, but they are going to be forced to throw some energy. So this is actually probably best case scenario for me. We can come in, get a small energy advantage with the Rhydon, and they do have a second fighting type. However, the opponent makes a brilliant catch there, catching the Surf onto their Corviknight. And that might just win them the game here. Of course, they've now banked a Rage Fist. We can come in with the Aurorus, and I will be able to take out the Corviknight. But it just depends. Can we win CMP up against the Annihilate? Is a Weather Ball going to be enough damage to get the KO even if we do win CMP? Well, I guess we're about to find out that... Well, it doesn't matter because we lose CMP anyways. Rage Fist, of course, going to be taking out Aurorus. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We've got the flying type Grunt. So we've got Shadow Murkrow into Talonflame. Honestly, I don't mind this. We can outpace them to the charge moves. And as well, Talonflame typically a Pokemon that is happy to double shield in the lead. In which case... that kind of works out for me because we can outpace them, we can get both their shields down, and then we will have our own Shadow Talonflame to potentially sweep in the end game. So here we go for Drill Peck number 2, grabbing the final shield, and then putting them into range where honestly we can Incinerate farm them down, as of course they have to throw on poor timing there, giving a full Incinerate in for free. The opponent's going to swap out into Gastrodon, but unlike most Shadow Talonflame, I'm running Brave Bird. Brave Bird gets the one shot. The opponent gonna come in with a second Mud Slapper in the form of Shadow Kanto Marowak, but it's gonna be Brave Bird number 2, easily getting the one shot there as well. We can Incinerate, farm down the Talonflame, didn't even need the Gyarados in the back, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We've got the electric typing and one of the worst things we could see in the lead. However, of course, they're not dealing super effective damage with the fast moves. So, unlike any other ground type Pokemon, we do still have a slither of hope here just because we're not actually taking much fast move pressure. Now, they have farmed out quite a lot of energy. I have to shield anyways, and they end up full sending an Earthquake. That is huge for me. We can now go for Magnet Bomb. Magnet Bomb we've already committed to, so we can't now settle for a Discharge. I'm going to shield this. The opponent is going to bait with a Psychic Fangs this time around, but that's okay with me. We can now farm up. We are very close to back-to-back Magnet Bombs here. Magnet Bomb, unfortunately, doesn't quite get the KO. The opponent already at another charge move, and it will be a second Earthquake. We come in with Shadow Galvantula, and unfortunately... we've got a triple electric team here, but this is the Pokemon that is going to struggle massively into Toucannon because I'm running Fury Cutter for coverage. Of course, if I ran triple electric fast moves, we then get very walled by a lot of Pokemon. However, that means that my triple electric team is going to end up going down to a Shadow Toucannon with Beak Blast, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. Obviously, I don't know what they had in the back there, but potentially Volt Switch Galvantula ends up flipping that game for me. But anyways, GG's to that trainer into the next battle. We're going to lead with Shadow Sneasel into an Alolan Ninetales. Of course, of all the fighting type Pokemon we could be using, this is probably the best one up against a fairy type like the Ninetales. They're going to swap into Sableye. They're going to shield here, and of course, I am going to have to double shield. And now we're committed to throwing Aerial Ace here. I can't full send a close combat. Instead, going to have to settle for another Aerial Ace. So Aerial Ace number 2 grabs the final shield there. They do get the Shadow Claw farm down, and now I'm hoping they're not on Dazzling Gleam. The opponent is on Dazzling Gleam, however, that gets the one shot. We come in with the Gallade, and I am going to overfarm as much as possible. Leaf Blade will get the KO from this range. The opponent now going to come in with the Shadow Ninetales, and I'm able to win CMP here, throwing another Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade number 2 gets the KO there, and that final Pokemon is going to be a Primeape, and this is one of the battles where I forgot that I had to commit to the Leaf Blade, but close combat gets the one shot, and I'm able to take that game. Now, technically, I think we should have lost CMP anyway, so I'm not sure if the opponent did slightly lag there. But either way, we're going to take the win. Into next battle, we are going to see a Turtonator in the lead. So this is great for my triple water team. They're going to swap into Dusclops, and I'm going straight for an Aquatail. We are so spammy here with the Shadow Quillfish that we can already throw a second Aquatail before they even get to a Shadow Punch. Aquatail number 2 is going to grab the shield there from the opponent, and I'm able to reach yet another Aquatail, probably implying that the opponent might be on Poltergeist as their charge move. So at this point, I'm going to shield this. I have to shield anyways. The opponent baits with an Ice Punch there, which almost guarantees that they have Poltergeist. Otherwise, they would have just gone for a Shadow Punch. They swap into Gastrodon, and we're able to land an Aquatail. We can come in with the Shadow Quagsire, of course. Going to shield this up here as the opponent is going to go for a Water Pulse. Absolutely fine with me there. We can now look to overfarm just a little bit, fire off the Aquatail before they get to the next move, and Aquatail will get the KO. They're going to come back in with the Turtonator. Of course, I could commit to a Stone Edge, but instead, we're just going straight for the Aquatail, and we end up grabbing the final shield. Of course, Dragon Claw from this range should be enough damage to get the KO, but we've got a Shadow Milotic on Dragon Tail as the fast move. We can outpace them, get to the Aquatail. Aquatail gets the KO there, and we can Dragon Tail, farm them down before they get to a Poltergeist, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top there, into the next battle, we've got the bug typing, and I'm just showing how I entered the battle here, definitely with a Shadow Scizor, only for the game to give me a Shadow Crustal anyways, and you will see that does actually end up making a pretty significant difference. Now here, we're going to go for an X-Scissor. X-Scissor, of course, is resisted, but I don't really want to debuff myself with a Close Combat as well. Close Combat does cost more energy, and as well, X-Scissor is still a pretty good move here. Primate, very glassy. It probably gets the KO from this range anyways, or puts them into Fury Cluster farm down range. So here, I'm going to look to overfarm. Unfortunately, Primeape is one of the few Pokemon that can comfortably outpace Pinsir, so they will reach another charge move. But at this point, of course, all shields are down. From this range, I could probably Bullet Punch farm them down here, but I'm forced to come in with Shadow Crustal. Fury Cutters are still resisted. That does big damage. I'm forced to throw straight away. I actually go for an Undercharge here, which I guess technically wouldn't be allowed in a Team Rocket battle, but either way, it doesn't really matter too much. We're now going to go for a lunge, but the opponent makes a catch onto a Azumarill. But however, I do feel like if we had the Scizor there, we get the full farm down. Scizor up energy is really dangerous into their backline, and as well, so is Shadow Galvantula. But of course, the opponent makes the nice catch there. They can go for the charge move, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's top there into the next battle. We're going to see Shadow Drillbur in the lead up against Empoleon. A really good matchup for me. Then I'm going to swap into Wigglytuff. And because we're ahead on energy, I can go for Rock Tomb here, debuff their attack stat. And that should hopefully allow me to live the next few charms and reach a second charge move. They go for Swift, and we are able to reach a second Rock Tomb. That is huge for me. Going to debuff them a second stage, or just get the KO up against the Wigglytuff. They're going to come back in with the Empoleon. Of course, I have to come in with the Shadow Sand Slash. Gonna shield the first charge move here as they go for the Hydro Cannon. Now I'm gonna look to overfarm just a little bit, fire off the Night Slash, and honestly, I'm hoping I grab a shield. We do end up grabbing the final shield. At this point, we put them into range where Golurk can come in and Mudslap farm them down. So it really just depends what their final Pokemon is. We get the Mudslap farm down, and they have a Bastiodon in the back. So it's gonna be a very comfortable win, so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We are going to have a Steel team this time around, leading with Shadow Magnemite into a Jellicent. So this is a great matchup for me. The opponent is, however, going to be able to throw on better timings earlier than I can. But either way, we can farm up to back-to-back discharges. If they shield this one, I can just throw the next one straight away. And they actually do end up shielding that. So this one, we're going to go for discharge number 2. Discharge is going to get the KO there. And now they come in with an Aurora. So this is looking really good for my backline. I'm going to bait, well, not really a bait. I am what the heck? I am forced to go for the discharge anyways. The opponent does get a very aggressive farm down. However, I'm just going to shield this because I have to commit to a full Bullet Punch farm down. They go for Meteor Beam, but they do just narrowly reach another charge move, and that might make a huge difference. Is their final Pokemon going to be Galarian Moltres? Unfortunately, I've only got resisted charge moves here. If I could have done so, I would have came in with my Shadow Metagross up against the Auroras, and I probably could have swept the game, going for Meteor Mash into the Galarian Moltres, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. Brave Bird gets the one shot, and I do end up losing that game. But GG's up on their into next battle. We've got a dark team here leading with Shadow Sableye in the lead. They're going to say swap into Empoleon. Fine with me. We can just stay in. We can outpace them because, of course, they are one turn behind. So we go for foul play. Foul play, going to grab the shield. And now the opponent going to throw on CMP. Unfortunately, we do lose CMP here. But that doesn't really matter too much as we've already grabbed a shield from the opponent. Foul play, gonna get the KO there. They come back in with the Jellicent, and the opponent just concedes the match. I don't know what was in the back, but clearly Sableye core breaking the entire team, and so I'm able to take that game. Into the next battle, we've got the grass typing. The opponent's going to swap into Ludicolo, and unfortunately, I know this is just a water weather ball, but I have to shield anyways. We're now going to look to overfarm as much as we can, and then fire off the Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb, of course, going to hit for super effective damage. The opponent not going to shield it. It gets the KO, which is very nice for me, and they come back in with the Wigglytuff. So at this point, I'm going to go for another Sludge Bomb here. Sludge Bomb should be grabbing the first shield from the opponent, and it does exactly that. Now I'm going to come in with the Abomasnow. Of course, Icy Wind or Swift, they're both going to hit for neutral damage, but I have to shield anyways, so we shield the Icy Wind. I can reach 2 Weather Balls before they do reach another Swift here, so we go for the first one. First one, not going to be shielded, and we can go for a second one straight away. Weather Ball is going to get the KO there. They come in with their final Pokemon, which is a Jellicent, and I can't quite reach an Energy Ball here, but I wouldn't be able to throw it anyways. Weather Ball is going to grab the final shield. That is huge for me. However, the opponent going to go for the Undercharge, meaning they get the Hex Farm down, and whilst I have a Grass type in the back, the Fast Food Pressure is Acid, it is non-stab, it is also resisted damage, whilst Leaf Blade is one of the best charge moves in the game in terms of its damage per energy, especially being a 35 energy move. It barely does not get the KO there, and they outpace me because of that undercharge, meaning we end up going down to the surf, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's and going into the final battle now, I am leading with a Shadow Magmortar. Of course, that is not an unevolved Pokemon. I wanted to lead with a Shadow Magmar, which technically still is an unevolved Pokemon, but of course you can't catch a Shadow Magmi from Shadow Rocket battles anyways. However, I completely ran out of Stardust for this challenge. At this point, this is the final battle, so hopefully you guys don't mind it too much. But anyways, we're going to go for back-to-back Fire Punches here. Fire Punch is going to grab a shield, and of course, I am going to have to stay in this matchup. I'm going to have to double shield, but we can once again win CMP. So Fire Punch coming through here up against Unova and Stunfisk. The opponent is also going to double shield. That's honestly not that bad for me. We can now come in with the Typhlosion. They should still outpace me, but the opponent ends up swapping out into a Celio, and that is fine with me. We're going to go straight for Thunder Punch here. Thunder Punch, of course, going to connect as they have no shields remaining, and they actually overfarm just slightly, which is perfect for me because now we can come in and go for the full Ember farm down. Ember gets the farm down there. Let's see, the opponent's going to come back in with the Unova and Stunfisk. I'm going to overfarm as much as possible. Fire off the Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere gets the KO, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Duot. Now, I do make another mistake here. I go for Brave Bird. Should have been Aura Sphere, but I checked after the battle. Technically, Aura Sphere would have just barely got the KO anyways, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.